Hello, welcome to my another session. In this session, I have a talk about different parts of the nervous system or different divisions of the nervous system found in vertebrates as well as in human. The nervous system, which also known as the neural system. Such neural system, it is divided into two parts on the basis of their function as well as their origin or the position. One is the central nervous system. The central nervous system, which comprises of brain and the spinal cord, and another is the peripheral nervous system or the peripheral neural system. So first go to the central nervous system. The central nervous system, also known as the central neural system, which is composed of brain and the spinal cord. The brain, which also known as the encephalon, present inside the skull or present inside the cranium or the brain box, and the spinal cord, which present inside the neural canal of the vertebral column or the backbone. So the brain and the spinal cord, which form central nervous system or central neural system. Again, brain or the encephalon, which is divided into three parts: the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The forebrain, which also known as the prosencephalon, midbrain, which is also known as the mesencephalon, and the hindbrain, which is known as the rhombencephalon. So brain is divided into three parts: forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. The anterior portion is known as the forebrain, and the posterior region or the portion of the brain is known as the hindbrain, and the middle portion of the brain is known as the midbrain. So the forebrain, which also known as the prosencephalon, is known as the prosencephalon, midbrain is known as the mesencephalon, and hindbrain, which also known as the rhombencephalon. So it is very important to memorize all these things of the brain or different parts of the brain. The forebrain, it has three important parts. One is the olfactory lobe, then the cerebrum, then diencephalon. So very important thing. The olfactory lobe, which also known as the rhyencephalon. Olfactory lobe, also known as the rhyencephalon, and such portion which controls our smelling power. Cerebrum, which is also known as the telencephalon, and another part is the diencephalon, also known as the thalamencephalon. So forebrain, it has three important parts. One is the olfactory lobe, also known as the rhyencephalon. Rhyen means nose, rhyencephalon, and the telencephalon or the cerebrum, and diencephalon, which is known as the thalamencephalon. So diencephalon, again, it has three important parts. One is the epithalamus, then thalamus, then hypothalamus. So middle is the thalamus, and above the thalamus there is the epithalamus, and below the thalamus there is the hypothalamus. So up to this we know the brain has three parts: the forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. The forebrain, which is known as the prosencephalon, midbrain, which is known as the mesencephalon, hindbrain, which is known as the rhombencephalon. So now the forebrain, the prosencephalon, it has three important parts: the olfactory lobe, which is known as the rhyencephalon, another is the cerebrum, which is known as the telencephalon, and third one is the diencephalon, or also known as the thalamencephalon. So out of these three, the diencephalon or the thalamencephalon, it has three important parts: the thalamus, above the thalamus there is the epithalamus, and below the thalamus there is the hypothalamus. So these are the very important parts of the forebrain. Now come to the midbrain. The midbrain, which also known as the mesencephalon, and which is actually totally covered by the forebrain and the hindbrain, and such midbrain, which is known as the mesencephalon, and it has two parts. One is the corpora quadrigemina and another is the peduncles. So the midbrain, it has only two parts of the brain, the corpora quadrigemina and the two major parts, another is the peduncles. Now come to the hindbrain, which also known as the rhombencephalon. The hindbrain, which also known as the rhombencephalon, and such hindbrain, it has three important parts: the cerebellum, the pons varolii, and medulla oblongata. So the hindbrain or the rhombencephalon, it has three parts. One is the cerebellum, another is the pons varolii, and the medulla oblongata. The first two, cerebellum and pons varolii, which forms or which collectively known as metencephalon, So these are the different parts of the brain or the encephalon. So brain, which is divided into three: forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, prosencephalon, mesencephalon, and the rhombencephalon. The prosencephalon, it has rhyncephalon, telencephalon, thalamencephalon. Diencephalon, it has again three important parts: the epithalamus, thalamus, hypothalamus. Hindbrain on the rhombencephalon, it has three important parts: the cerebellum, pons varolii, medulla oblongata. Cerebellum and the pons varolii, which collectively known as the metencephalon. The midbrain or the mesencephalon, it has two important parts: the corpora quadrigemina and another is the peduncles. So these are the very important parts of the brain, and you have to memorize all the part and all the name of the brain. And now come to the spinal cord. The spinal cord, which arises from the brain and which descends into the neural canal of the vertebral column. So this is the spinal cord and the brain, which form the central nervous system. Now come to the peripheral nervous system. The nerve which arises from the brain or the cranium or the spinal cord, such nerve form the peripheral nervous system. So the nerve which arises from the brain and the spinal cord, they form the peripheral nervous system. So those nerves arises from brain, these are known as the cranial nerves, and those nerves which arises from the spinal cord, these are known as the spinal nerve. So cranial nerves and the spinal nerve both form the peripheral nervous system. So the peripheral nervous system comprises of cranial nerve and spinal nerve. Cranial nerve and spinal nerve. So this is the structural part. So the peripheral nervous system comprises of cranial nerve and spinal nerve. These cranial nerve arises from the brain, and the spinal nerve, these nerves arises or develop from the spinal cord. But on the basis of function, the peripheral nervous system, which is divided into two parts. One is the autonomic nervous system or the neural system. Another is the somatic nervous system or the neural system, which also known as the voluntary nervous system. The somatic nervous system or the voluntary nervous system, it means here the efferent neurons, those neurons which convey the motor impulse, from central nervous system to skeletal muscles. So the motor neuron which convey the nerve impulse from central nervous system to skeletal muscles and which forms the system is known as the somatic nervous system or voluntary nervous system. Another is the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system or the neural system, here the motor neurons which convey the nerve impulse, motor nerve impulse from central nervous system to smooth muscles of the alimentary canal or the visceral organs. Alimentary canal or visceral organs are the smooth muscles of different glands or the alimentary canal. That's why it is known as the autonomic nervous system. So on the basis of function, peripheral nervous system, it has two parts, autonomic nervous system or the neural system, and another is the voluntary nervous system or the neural system. Such autonomic nervous system, again it has two type of function. One is the excitatory function, another is the inhibitory function. So depending upon the function, excitatory or the inhibitory function, the autonomic nervous system again divided into sympathetic nervous system or the neural system. Another is the parasympathetic nervous system or the neural system. The sympathetic nervous system, this is the excitatory function, it has the excitatory function, and parasympathetic nervous system or the neural system, it has the inhibitory function. So these are the different parts and different divisions of the nervous system found in case of vertebrates as well as humans. If you like, then click on my another video regarding the subsequent part of the nervous system. Thank you for watching.